Hello ECO2000 students, this is Dr. Conway here for lesson 1 of your course. This is the way we will go in the course with the lecture videos rather than being able to be in class due to COVID, of course. But I won't talk very much about the structure of the course. We'll do that on our first Zoom call. Today I just want to get started on some of the content, very basic beginning, which is how does environmental economics relate to the rest of economics, and what are we doing when we look at environmental economics. Okay, so let's pick up that issue now, and in our call we can pick up any issues related to the course itself. All right, so this is called this lesson is called Schools of Economic Thought, and it tries to situate environmental economics into the broader matrix of economic studies, okay, for our purposes. So, I mean, we could break down economics in a number of different ways, but for our purposes, I'm going to lay out a bit of a structure for you to understand where environmental economics fits. But let's first talk about economics basics. What is economics? Economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources among alternative competing objectives. Two concepts are critical to the basics of economics: scarcity and opportunity cost. When these two concepts are considered, you understand a major rationale for economics, which is this: if we don't apply economics to major decisions, we might end up serving less important objectives and using all of our scarce resources before addressing more important objectives. That's a very simple way of capturing what's going on in economics, okay? Three critical questions guide all economic inquiry. What ends do we desire? What limited or scarce resources do we need to attain these ends? What ends get priority, and to what extent should we allocate resources to them? Okay. We can use these three questions as criteria to discuss the main schools of economic thought. All right. So we're going to go through that very basically now. All right, in this lesson. The first school of economic thoughts is still the predominant school of economic thought in Western society today, which is Neoclassical Economics. Traditionally, economists have said that the answer to the first question is utility or human welfare. What ends do we desire? Okay, so our main ends are our own utility, all right? Our own personal needs, or our corporate needs, or our group needs, okay, as we define them. And that sense of need, or that utility, is defined through the free market transactions. In other words, we make a decision what shoes to buy, what house to buy, what car to buy, and so on. Okay, and that's done through what they call the free market. All right. With respect to the second question, what limited or scarce resources do we need to achieve those ends? The neoclassical economists would say that's supply and demand of free market decisions made by individuals and corporations and groups. It's not. It's done as each individual discrete decision on what to buy, what to consume, how fast to consume it, and so on, are made by independent free actors in the marketplace, and that's why we call it the free market. Collectively, those discrete decisions form the shape of the entire market at any given time, and that's called the invisible hand of the market. All right, that's what they call it, the invisible hand of the market. The same invisible hand discharges obligations to the third question as well, our third question, right? What ends get priority, and to what extent should we allocate resources to them? All right, and from a neoclassical perspective, humans are assumed to be insatiable. So welfare is increased through the ever greater provision of goods and services as measured by their market value. Okay, as such, for the neoclassical economists, unending economic growth is typically considered an adequate, measurable proxy for the priority desired ends of the society, just as it is for individuals. And the discrete individual decisions made aggregated up become the invisible hand of the market, and that will determine what should be prioritized. So the setting of priorities is, again, the free hand of the market. So neoclassical economics assumes that markets reveal most desired ends, and that most scarce resources are market goods, and the mechanism for allocating resources to alternative ends is the free market. All right. And that's the way neoclassical economics sets it up. And that's the way most students will understand economics in its most basic form. Because you went to high school and so on, you heard about the free market, you heard about all of these things, basic neoclassical economic concepts, all right? Most of us, are inculcated with that viewpoint from very early age in terms of understanding what a capitalist free market is. The problem is that we quickly discover as we get into other schools of economic thought that while there are strengths obviously in the neoclassical school of thought, there are also a lot of myths, okay, about how the economy functions, okay? Then in contrast to our sort of feeding off the limitations of neoclassical economics is another school of thought called welfare economics, okay? So whereas neoclassical economics adopts the invisible hand theorem, whereby supply and demand and competition in a free market leads to efficient allocation of resources, it largely turns a blind eye to market inefficiencies and perverse outcomes of free markets. Okay? For welfare economics, by contrast, free markets do not always lead to social optimum outcomes or explicit desired ends. For example, if we had a completely free market in labor, what do you think would happen to your wages? All right. If we had no union protections, no government law saying there has to be a minimum wage and so on, what would happen? Would the free market all generate top wages for all of us? Probably not, right? Indeed, while neoclassical economics suggests that no government intervention is required for the market to perform its utility maximizing function, known as laissez-faire policies, welfare economics argues that markets can and often do result in perverse outcomes that point to the need for government policy action. Things like minimum wage, health benefits, worker safety regulations, all of these kinds of things, right? All right. For instance, a situation where someone holds every good and the rest of the population holds none would, if you followed the logic through to its finish, be a Pareto efficient distribution of the neoclassical economic logic. It would be highly efficient, wouldn't it? If one guy hiring the best people could control all the resources, that would be very efficient, wouldn't it? But how effective would it be for maintaining a stable society, and how effective would it be for improving human quality of life overall? Okay, not to mention the environment. We haven't gotten there yet. As such, welfare economics is concerned with introducing redistributive aspects into economic decision-making and not simply relying on the free market allocation. Welfare economics considers relationship between market efficiency and welfare distribution considerations, a move away from laissez-faire to government policy interventions for public welfare. Okay? In summary, for welfare economics, the answer to our three questions are generally as follows. What ends do we desire? Economic growth, efficiency, and utility maximization in the free market remain important, but more concern for redistributive benefits to social welfare. What limited or scarce resources do we need to attain these ends? A greater share of societal resources move through state intervention to support broader social welfare in addition to markets. What ends get priority, and to what extent should we allocate resources to them? Government plays a bigger role in setting priorities in support of markets and social welfare objectives. Okay, so we've got the two. We've got the neoclassical and we've got welfare economics, and those are the two predominant economic schools of thought in society today. All right, and you hear those conflicts, don't you, in the media, right? Between maybe the conservative economic agenda and the liberal and NDP economic agenda, right? We see the distinctions. The support for public welfare measures as opposed to not. The support for sort of public health care and maybe a desire to turn more free market into the public health care and so on. You see these two concepts in our newspapers every day. It's a constant dynamic in today's Western society, okay? But so and then political economy came along, and political economy's been around for a while, and it's an active school of thought by lots of advisors to governments and so on, but it's clearly not the predominant economic schools of thought in society today. It's an active one, but not predominant. Because political economy is concerned with the interplay between politics, society, and economics. Political economists, within what the school of thought that I'm trained in until I moved into environmental economics over time, Political economists believe that the separation between the study of politics and economics is an artificial one. The state creates the conditions for organized economic activity, and without the state, organized economic activity could not exist. There's no such thing as a free market anywhere in the world today. A free market would be a barter system. I raise chickens, you raise pigs. I walk down the street with 10 chickens and say, look, I'll give you 10 chickens for one little pig. Barter system, completely free market. You can decide to take the deal or not take the deal. There are no rules. They're just chickens and pigs. That's it. But no modern economic system could work that way, obviously, right? The state creates the conditions for organized economic activity. And in addition to doing that, the state indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, shapes the distribution of power and wealth between different groups and individuals. Okay? That power and wealth distribution cannot be understood devoid of power relationships and political systems that sustain them. We have laws enforced by the state that protect wealthy people against redistribution of wealth, right? And for good reason. But to pretend that wealth is an endemic right as opposed to a right reinforced by laws of the political system is naive. Okay? We know that that's not the case. In capitalist societies, for example, political economy would consider how the state, including laws, institutions, and processes, act to limit threats to the capitalist system. The state institutionalizes bias against changes to the predominant economic system, especially those changes that threaten major unplanned upheaval to the economic system. And don't get me wrong, for good reason, right? We need wealth generation to feed the people and to provide public welfare, to support the state, to support modern infrastructure, and so on. We get all that. But how that's done is shaped by an interaction between the political system and the economic system. It's not the economic system over here that runs as a free market and the political system, neither the twain shall meet and everything goes along functional. We know that that's not the way the real world works, right? Much of the political economy is concerned with the question, how do we understand the difficulty of bringing about policy reforms that are desired from a societal welfare perspective? Why do they seem to be continually blocked? Okay? So in other words, political economists are change agents of economics, if you will. Okay? Like welfare economics, but going a step further. All right? For these reasons, the concepts and methods of political economics are influential in environmental economics, because environmental economics are also change agents in the system, and we'll explain how that's the case in a minute, okay? So in summary, the political economist's response to our three questions would be, what ends do we desire? Misses the point. The key is what power relationship restrict achieving desired ends. We have lots of desired ends in society, right, that never get achieved, or we struggle to achieve because the current system is like a big battleship. It doesn't turn on a dime. There are power relationships that work against change because it's not in their interest to change, all right? So that's important to understand. What limited or scarce resources do we need to achieve these ends? Resources are scarce, but the main point is that resources are controlled by the relatively few relative to the many, and this creates perceptions of scarcity that constrains positive change. All right? What ends get priority, and to what extent should we allocate resources to them? The overarching priority for the powers that be is to sustain the current system. Okay? And that's the way they use that. That's political economists would argue that's how resources get prioritized. They fundamentally get prioritized to sustain the existing system. Okay? Now, that's not all bad, right? There are some good things of the existing system, obviously, right? So for sustaining those, there's good there, all right? But if we want to bring about change, political economists would say you can't just look at the economy. You have to look at the relationship between the power relationship of the political system and the power relationships of the economy, all right? Now, what about environmental economics? It comes along, and it takes up many of the tenor of political economy, actually, all right? But also a little bit on welfare economics. From an ecological economics perspective, there are two schools of thought, right? There's ecological economics, what we call deep ecological economics, and environmental economics. Our course is about environmental economics, okay? Ecological economics tends to focus on things like limits to growth, the steady state economy, and so forth, which is on your reading list, right? But environmental economists focus on a more specific question, okay? And for our purposes, the distinction is not a hugely significant issue. The point of both of these sub-schools, ecological economics and environmental economics, is that they want to reintroduce the natural environment into economic decision making, okay? Whereas neoclassical economics, and to extent welfare economics, see the economy as part of a closed system. Environmental economics and ecological economics sees the economy as an open system, okay? They would argue that the first is a myth. You can't have an economy if you're not extracting things from the natural environment and putting waste back into the natural environment. Okay, environmental economists would say it's impossible and that these are artificial notions of the economy that are long past outdated. Okay, and that they would argue that to function, the economy must extract resources from the environment and dispose of large amounts of waste back into the environment, which we in fact know is the case, right? I mean, this is realistic. This is reality, in fact. Okay. The natural environment is also not limited and isn't transformed by economic activity. The problems are at the core of environmental economics. The problem of environmental externalities, the correct management of natural resources. We'll talk about these natural externalities next week. I'm not going to get into it now, okay? These two problems are considered from the perspective of how we can better account for the environment in economic decision making. And better yet, how can accounting for the environment return value to the economy and social well-being? And in our course, we'll be looking at how we take the environment into account in the built environment, okay? Because I will tailor this material. I have to give you the theoretical backdrop, but I will tailor this material for your career development experience, okay? So, in summary, the environmental economists would approach our three questions this way. What ends do we desire? Economic activities that meets the needs of society and is sustainable without irreversible harm to the environment. What limited or scarce resources do we need to attain these ends? Resources should only be used at a rate and in a way that is sustainable. Okay? What ends get priority and to what extent should we allocate resources to them? The ultimate priority is to ensure our economic activities take the environment fully into account from a sustainability perspective. An integration of an economy and environment, which is the primary objective of environmental economics. Okay? So that gives us a sort of a general overview of what's going on, what we're going to be doing in our course. As I said, I'll talk more about my approach to the course when we have our Zoom calls. And also realize that as early as week 2, we will be forming our groups for your term design projects. Okay? So try not to miss the Zoom call next week, certainly. And if you can make the one today on the 8th at 4 o'clock as sort of a general meet and greet call, then please do so. All right? I hope to be talking to you all very soon, and welcome aboard to the course. Bye-bye for now.